Rafe, you died.
It's fine now. I'm back.
I don't know where I am.
Rafe. Stay away. We gotta talk, all right?
Ain't nothing to talk about with you. Y'all know Danny was even good enough to look out for my girl for me while I was gone.
And we thought that you were dead.
I almost did die, you little son of a bitch.
The story begins way back in 1923 in the rural countryside of Tennessee. We meet two young boys named Rafe McCawley and Danny Walker, who are the absolute best of friends. These two boys spend their days playing in the back of an old broken biplane that belongs to Rafe's father, pretending they are brave combat pilots fighting off German enemies from World War I. Outside, Rafe's father actually lands his plane near the shed where the boys are playing. He hops off and drives away in his truck while the boys make their way towards his plane. Rafe tells Danny that he'll teach his friend how to fly. They jump on the newly landed plane, continuing their play pretend. Rafe sits in the pilot's seat, actually flipping some of the plane's switches as if it's a toy. Suddenly, the engine roars to life and the plane starts moving through the fields. Rafe manages to lift the plane off the ground for a few seconds, and in a mixture of terror and excitement, the boys realize they're flying before they crash back down. Thankfully, they're unharmed, and despite knowing they'll be in trouble, the boys are ecstatic. Danny's father soon arrives and is very angry, pulling Danny away by force. He reprimands Danny for playing with Rafe, whom he calls stupid because the boy can't read. Danny is slapped and dragged home. To protect his friend, Rafe picks up a block of wood and hits Danny's father in the back, calling him a dirty German. It turns out Danny's father was a soldier in the Great War, and he tells the boys he prays that no one ever has to see the terrible things he saw during the fighting. He walks away, and before Danny follows, he tells Rafe that they're best friends. A few years later, it's January 1941, and World War II is peaking. The two boys have grown up into handsome and skilled young men. Rafe and Danny are now first lieutenants in the United States Army Air Corps. They are stationed in Mitchell Field, an airbase in Long Island. While other pilots have landed during their training session, the two are still in the air. Rafe challenges Danny on a game of air chicken. Danny refuses, but Rafe comes right at him, prompting him to indulge in Rafe's shenanigans.
Those are some smooth aces.
Did you say something? You believe that a $45,000 airplane is there for your amusement?
After he landed, Rafe is getting scolded by his commander, Major Jimmy Doolittle. While Danny waits to the side, Doolittle berates Rafe for constantly doing dangerous stunts and risking $45,000 airplanes. Thankfully, Rafe's smooth talking impresses Doolittle enough to let them off the hook, even saying that Rafe reminds him of his younger self. Then, he breaks the news about an opportunity Rafe has been given by the British Royal Air Force. He is scouted for the Eagle Squadron to fly on the front lines in Europe. Doolittle is obligated to ask Rafe to stay in the U.S. as one of their best pilots, but personally, he recommends the young man to leave for England. Rafe decides to take the chance. However, Danny is worried for his friend's safety. He's going to fly in an actual war, not just the training that they've been doing for the past couple of years. Rafe argues that he wants to be a combat fighter and go to war. The boys cut their argument short because the whole team is excited to enjoy their weekend break in New York City. On a train on the way to New York City, a group of Navy nurses are also excited about their weekend leave. One of them, Evelyn Johnson, tells a story about what happened during a medical exam they did a month ago. They were in charge of the Air Force's routine medical exam, including Rafe and Danny's unit. During the eyesight test, Rafe is very nervous because he has dyslexia, which makes it hard for him to read the letters on the chart. He tries to cheat by memorizing the chart and getting help from Danny, but Evelyn, who is in charge, catches him in the act.
Read the bottom line again, please.
E.
X-E.
X-E. X-E.
But Army and Navy requires 20/20 vision.
Rafe then makes a very passionate plea to her, explaining that he just gets his letters mixed up sometimes, but his eyesight is actually perfect. He begs her not to fail his medical exam because being a pilot is everything to him, and failing means he won't be allowed to fly anymore.
That file says I'm the best pilot in this room. Ma'am, please.
I had no choice. I passed him.
To say thank you, Rafe goes back to the clinic to see her again, but he uses a trick. He steals another soldier's file just so he can get an extra vaccine shot from her, have a chance to thank her, and ask her out for dinner.
Take my new hero's daughter out tonight just to die!
Well, it's kind of like this.
I'll really, really lick you. Like you.
Because he has already had the vaccine, the double dose makes him feel lightheaded and his words jumbled up. He ends up falling down and knocking his nose, which starts to bleed. Despite the injury, he waits outside the building until Evelyn goes home for the evening. He asks Evelyn to drink champagne with him, and she agrees. While opening the bottle, the cork flies and hits Rafe straight on his injured nose, making it bleed again. Evelyn treats him with a chuckle.
It hurts something fierce.
Lace.
Ruined everything.
It's the most romantic story I ever heard.
Back in the present, Evelyn is greeted by Rafe immediately after hopping off the train. It's clear that the two are in love.
Well, it took me 6 hours to fold these.
Want you to meet my friends?
Hi.
Would you happen to have any friends?
Your pick.
The nurses and the pilots go dancing at a nightclub together. Some of them have started flirting with each other, except for Danny, who's rather awkward.
Get him in a plane, he's sure of himself. It's not that he's shy, he's just...
Reds.
Yeah, she's all yours, Soldier.
No.
Rafe and Evelyn decide to sneak out of the club. They want to enjoy the city by themselves, so they steal a police boat to go for a private ride in the New York harbor.
Yeah, careful now. Here, sit down. That was not part of the day.
On the way back to a hotel, Rafe eventually shocks Evelyn by telling her that he has volunteered to join the Eagle Squadron and is leaving for England the very next day. Evelyn worries for his safety just like Danny did, but then Rafe tells her that he loves her. They were planning to come to the hotel to make love, but Danny says he can't do it as he doesn't want to ruin the night or for Evelyn to have regrets. He asks her not to come to the train station to say goodbye because it would be too painful for him to say goodbye twice.
I will come back.
But privately, he tells Danny that if she shows up anyway, he will know for sure that she truly loves him. Only Danny accompanies him to the train station, and Rafe hugs his best friend goodbye. Eventually, Evelyn does show up at the platform, and even though they don't get to speak, Rafe sees her from the train and realizes just how much she cares for him.
She loves me.
Rafe arrives in England and is shoved straight into the chaotic reality of war. He is greeted by his superior and given a plane that is stained by the blood of the previous pilot. Meanwhile, the President of the United States is holding a meeting about their involvement in the war. His counselors are against officially joining the war, but the President wants to send more weapons and military vehicles to help England and Russia fight the Nazis. Over in Japan, Admiral Yamamoto and Commander Genda are planning a surprise massive strike on the U.S. Pacific Fleet because the United States cut off Japan's oil supply. They will launch their attack on Pearl Harbor, but they must plan accordingly. Coincidentally, Pearl Harbor is where Danny and Evelyn are both transferred.
But say on average...
At the time, Pearl Harbor was considered the safest and most beautiful place for a soldier or nurse to be stationed. Evelyn works at the Tripler Army Hospital with her nurse friends while Danny is stationed at Wheeler Airfield with his squad. Amidst the excitement, Evelyn exchanges letters with Rafe, who tells her about the cold horrors of the front lines. The situation in the world is getting very tense, but Pearl Harbor seems oblivious to the fact. Their war analysts instruct to send more ships to Europe as instructed by the president, thinking that their Pacific fleet is safe from an attack for now. They don't know that there's a Japanese spy named Takeo Yoshikawa who is stationed in Hawaii, taking detailed pictures of the naval base to help with the attack plan. The Japanese engineers even figured out how to attach wooden fins to their torpedoes so they can work in the shallow waters of Pearl Harbor. The naval intelligence team seems to notice the unusual behavior of the Japanese forces, but they can't be sure about what their enemies are plotting. Back in England, the Eagle Squadron moves in a hurry for an air raid. Rafe is engaged in a fierce air battle over the English Channel. Rafe leads his group well.
I'm on his tail. Hammer down.
But his plane is eventually shot down by an enemy fighter. He crashes into the freezing waters of the channel and is presumed to be killed in action. When the news reaches Hawaii, Danny breaks the news to Evelyn, who is absolutely devastated. They mourn the loss of their friend and lover together. Over the next few months, their shared grief brings them closer, to the point of going on dates together. Their friends urge them to be in a relationship, but both are still mindful about their connections to Rafe.
Rafe sent his best friend to tell you so you would be okay, so you can move on.
One evening, Danny sneaks Evelyn up in his plane to watch the sunset, having fun with each other's company.
It's called this harbor Waimomi. It means water of pearls.
Once they landed, they shared a kiss and made love. The next day, Evelyn is unsure about how fast their relationship is progressing. However, due to Danny's excitement, she agrees that it's time to try and move on from the past. While their romance unravels, the Japanese continue their intel gathering and attack preparations. But then comes the night of December 6, 1941. Evelyn and Danny are shocked to find a telegram saying Rafe is alive.
I'm alive.
Suddenly, he is standing right outside Evelyn's door. He explains that he survived the crash in the sea and was rescued by a French fishing boat, but he was stuck in Nazi-occupied France for months and couldn't get word back to anyone.
C'est parce qu'il est mort!
They said you were shot down in the sea.
Yeah, I was. I was in occupied France and I couldn't get word out.
Rafe's joy at being home quickly turns to total heartbreak when he realizes that his best friend and the woman he loves are now together. Feeling completely betrayed, Rafe leaves and goes to a local hula bar to drink away his pain. He finds him there, hoping to explain everything and fix their friendship, but Rafe is too hurt and angry.
Y'all know Danny was even good enough to look out for my girl for me while I was gone.
And we thought that you were dead.
I almost did die, you little son of a bitch.
The two best friends get into a massive drunken brawl, breaking things all over the bar. When the military police arrive to stop the commotion, Rafe and Danny jump into Danny's car and drive away to avoid being thrown in the brig. They eventually pull over and have a heart-to-heart talk.
If you hadn't gone, none of this would have happened.
It was my fault, I guess.
We can work things out so that things can be right between me and you.
Haze.
Do you read that? Acknowledge.
You cheater.
They wake up in the car the next morning, December 7th, to a complete nightmare. The Imperial Japanese Navy has launched its surprise attack on Pearl Harbor. Hundreds of Japanese fighter and bomber planes are swarming over the harbor, dropping missiles and bombs on the fleet. The U.S. forces are caught totally off guard because the radar station at Pearl mistook the incoming Japanese planes for a scheduled flight of American planes coming from the mainland. The destruction is absolutely horrific. Huge battleships like the USS Arizona and the USS Oklahoma are hit repeatedly. The Oklahoma capsizes, trapping many sailors inside who slowly drown in a watery grave. The airfields are also bombed, destroying most of the American planes before they can even get off the ground. Amidst the smoke and fire, Rafe and Danny realize they have to fight back. They drive through the explosions to reach a small training airfield that hasn't been hit yet. With the help of their fellow pilots and mechanics,
I got 4 left. 1's good to go, 2 need ammo, 1 needs fuel.
they manage to get 2 fighter planes into the air. They engage the Japanese planes in a fierce dogfight over the harbor. Using reckless tactics they learned as kids, like a game of chicken, they managed to shoot down several Japanese aircraft between the 2 of them. They are the only ones who really managed to put up a fight in the air that day.
Yeah, I got one! Ah, come on! Taught you how to fly, Lieutenant.
Meanwhile, back at the hospital, Evelyn and the other nurses are overwhelmed by hundreds of wounded and dying soldiers. Evelyn has to make the impossible choice of triage, deciding which patients can be saved and which ones are beyond help. She even has to mourn her friend Betty, who was killed during the attack. In the harbor, men like Petty Officer Doris Miller, a cook on one of the ships, step up to man anti-aircraft guns to defend their ships. When the attack finally ends, more than 3,000 Americans have lost their lives.
Admiral, and considered imminent.
So fear not. Fear not, my son. Glory is forever. Hold on to your faith, my son.
We've got men trapped everywhere in the harbor.
The next day, President Franklin D. Roosevelt delivers his famous Day of Infamy speech and asks Congress to declare war on Japan. The U.S. has officially joined the Second World War.
I ask that the Congress declare a state of war.
And now they're planning their own secret attack to retaliate.
I'm talking about hitting the heart of Japan, the way they have hit us.
President, with all respect, sir, what you're asking can't be done.
Do not tell me it can't be done.
Rafe and Danny are hailed as heroes for their actions. After a mass memorial for the fallen, Rafe and Danny are assigned to immediately fly back to the mainland by Major Doolittle. While packing his belongings, Rafe is visited by Evelyn. She finds out about the boys' top-secret assignment and tries to explain that she still loves Rafe too. Rafe says that loving her kept him alive and that he promised God he won't ask for anything else if he could see her one more time. She then reveals a secret. She doesn't want Danny to know about the pregnancy because she wants him to be focused and safe during the dangerous mission. She tells Rafe that she is going to stay with Danny to raise their family, but she confesses that she will always love Rafe just as much as Danny. Rafe is heartbroken but accepts her decision.
You might love him more than you love me.
I love you, Danny, and I'll be here waiting for you when you come back.
On mainland, Rafe and Danny are brought into Major Doolittle's office, both promoted to captains, and awarded the Silver Star for their bravery. However, the war is just beginning, and Major Doolittle is planning a secret and very dangerous mission to strike back by bombing mainland Japan. He asks for volunteers. And of course, Rafe and Danny both step up to join the mission, even though they know the chances of survival are very low. That evening, Danny approaches Rafe, who's sitting by the campfire alone. Knowing about Evelyn's pregnancy, Rafe tries to persuade Danny not to go on the mission. He wants to protect Danny for Evelyn's sake, but Danny refuses to stay behind. Danny thinks Rafe is just trying to be the protective big brother, like he always has been since they were kids. For the next 3 months, Rafe, Danny, and the other pilots train in Florida and California.
The mission I'm asking you to volunteer for is exceptionally dangerous. Good bet that in the next 6 weeks, you or he will be dead. Everyone brave enough to accept this, step forward.
The plan is for a carrier ship to bring them close to Japanese shores, fly to the mainland, drop the bombs, then fly straight to China for landing. They have to learn a very specific and difficult task, taking off in heavy bomber planes from the very short deck of an aircraft carrier, which is less than 500 feet long. This has never been done before, and many people think it's impossible. To make the planes light enough to fly, they have to remove all unnecessary equipment, including the heavy machine guns, which they replace with broomsticks painted black to scare off enemy fighters. Major Doolittle even shows them it can be done by taking off himself just before the plane hits the end of the runway. In April 1942, the mission officially began. The USS Hartnett aircraft carrier sails toward Japan with 16 bombers on deck. The plan is to launch when they are 400 miles away from the coast, but they are spotted by a Japanese patrol boat much earlier than expected, when they are still around 600 miles away. Doolittle has to make a tough call and orders the planes to launch immediately, even though they might not have enough fuel to reach the safe landing zones in China. The planes take off one by one, barely clearing the edge of the carrier deck. They fly low over the water to avoid radar and successfully reach Tokyo, where they drop their bombs on industrial targets and factories. After the bombing is a success, the pilots have to evade anti-aircraft weapons and head for China. However, their fuel is running out fast, and with no access to navigation, it's a very difficult task. Rafe is eventually forced to crash land their planes in a rice field in Japanese-occupied territory in China.
Jets! We got jet patrols on!
Rafe and his crew are quickly surrounded by Japanese soldiers. Just as things look like they are over for Rafe, Danny's plane flies over and shoots at the soldiers to save his friend, but then Danny crashes his own plane into the field. Rafe runs to find Danny, who is badly injured and has a piece of metal stuck in his neck. The Japanese soldiers attack again, surrounding the injured men with weapons aimed at their faces. They tie up Danny and the other soldiers. Still free, Rafe takes a gun and shoots a few Japanese soldiers until he runs out of bullets. Then, Danny is shot multiple times while trying to protect Rafe from getting killed. Rafe and the other pilots manage to fight off the remaining Japanese troops, then Rafe holds his dying friend in his arms. He tearfully tells Danny that he cannot die because he is going to be a father. He is essentially asking Rafe to take care of Evelyn and the baby for him. Danny then passes away, leaving Rafe completely heartbroken. The surviving pilots are eventually rescued by Chinese troops and are brought back home to the United States. When the plane lands, Evelyn is waiting at the airfield. Her smile disappears when she sees Rafe and the others carrying Danny's coffin off the plane. She breaks down in tears, and she and Rafe mourn their loss together. The movie then jumps forward a few years to after the war has ended. Rafe and Evelyn are now married and living on the farm in Tennessee. They are raising a young son, whom they named Danny in honor of his biological father.